Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you Aziza for that warm welcome. This panel is going to be focused on Tigrayan women and the things that we're doing to lead advocacy efforts and change within our community. So I'll be your moderator today. I'm Fadila Casa from Seattle, Washington. I'm here also on behalf of the Nagashi community of Seattle, so here representing them as well. And I'm going to introduce our lovely panelists here. Today I am joined by Memher Zuriyash Amare. Zuriyash Amare was born and raised, there you go. So she was born and raised in Adigrat, Tigray, but currently lives in Colorado. She used to be a teacher in Tigray. She went to school for teaching in Debre Birhan and is using that experience now to teach her community and peers to this day. She served as secretary for both the Colorado Tigray community and Tigray Communities Forum, and she is now chairperson for the Women's Committee. So please give it up for Memher Zuriyash. I also have with me Hidat Hagos right next to her. And go ahead. Hidat lives in the Bay Area. She's fluent in Spanish, English, Tigrinya, and Amharic. She has personal experience to what war does for families at an early age. And since the war in Tigray, she is always engaged in advocating for the people of Tigray, using mainstream media. She writes articles in Spanish, and it does a lot of advocacy work in Spanish, which I think is phenomenal. She supports organizations operating to help alleviate some of the catastrophic humanitarian consequences for this war on Tigray, and always finding ways to connect her Tigrayan heritage to the rest of the world. She has a master's in hospitality and tourism from the University of Rovira Virgili, Spain. She has her master's in Spain, y'all. And she also has her bachelor's in business management from Bahar Dar University. She worked as a teacher out there. She's certified in Spanish healthcare, and she's certified as a bilingual QBS Spanish and Alta language services. So please give it up for Hidat. That's amazing. All right, and last but not least, I also have the amazing Samhal Germai with me. You all know her, she's phenomenal. Samhal is a leader in the Colorado Tigrayan community. She helped organize local and national protests in New York, DC, LA, San Francisco, and countless other cities. She's a representative of the Tigrayan community of Denver, and through her advocacy work, she's always connecting the diaspora to our families and friends in Tigray using social media campaigns like Tigrai to Tigrai. We all remember those videos that we made for our families. That was her, and she's also launching various fundraising initiatives such as the National Car Bash. She's also sells those makata dresses that we all love, and the live auction. And she has that Tigray versus everybody suit you guys saw yesterday. That was also her. She creates high quality merch with her line Tigrai to Tigrai to raise more awareness through fashion. So please give it up for Samhal. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna go ahead and have some questions lined up for the panelists, after which I'm gonna open it up to the floor, so keep thinking about what you guys wanna ask these lovely group of ladies up here. But the first question that I wanna ask you guys is, how did you guys become involved in the community, and what obstacles did you guys face? And that's open to everyone.
Okay. Is it working? Okay. Let me start, and it's gonna go. How I started to work in a community is I always think about my Tigray, plus my people in diaspora, how are we living? Of course, we are hardworking. ሰራሕተኛታት ኢና ብትግርኛ እዩ ዝኾነት ወግዒናተይ ሰራሕተኛታት ኢና ካልኣይ ከዓ ብጣዕሚ ክሎዝ ኢና ኣብ ፀገምናን ኣብ ተሓጓስናን ብሓደ ኢና ግን ክንሰርሖ እንተለና ኮሌክቲቭሊ ተዝኸውን ዝብል እምነት ነይሩኒ ማለት ኦርጋናይዝ ብዝኾነ መንገዲ ካልእ ብተወሳኺ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ወይ ከዓ ኣብቲ ዲያስፖራ ኮይንካ ክትነብር ተለኻስ ካብቲ ከባቢ ካብቲ ጋቨርንመንት ይኹን ካብ ዝተፈላለየ ኣንፈት ዝርከብ ባዕልና ሰሪሕና ገንዘብና ታክስና ከፈልና ዘይንረኽቦም ብዙሓት ነገራት ስለ ዝነበሩ ኮሚኒቲ ኦርጋናይዝድ እንተኮይንና ግን ዝብል ታይስሙ ሒዘ ብዙሕ ግዜ ይሓስብ ስለ ዝነበርኩ ኣብ ጽቡቕ ኣጋጣሚ ኣብ ኮሎራዶ ኣብ ኮሚኒቲ ተዋሲኤ ማለት እዩ ጽቡቕ ተንቀሳቒስና ኣብ ከምዚ በፂሕና ኣለና ግን እንታይ እዩ ኦብስታክል ዝብል ኣሎ እንታይ ኦብስታክል ኣጋጢሙኪ ንዝብል ግን ኣነ ጥራሕ ዘይኮንኩስ ኣብ ካልኦት እውን ዝረእኽዎ ኤክስፔሪንስ ወሲኸ ክነግረኩም ተኾይነ ከም ኮሚኒቲ ንሕና ዝጋጮ ነገር እኒሄና ክእረም ኢልና ንሓስቦ ንሓዋር እውን ኣብ ከይዲ ክጽብቕ እዩ ምክንያቱ ኣመራርሓ ናብ ደቅና ናሕለፍናዮ ስለ ዘለና ግን እቲ ዝነበረ ኦብስታክል እንታይ እዩ ፖለቲካን ናይ ኮሚኒቲ ስራሕቲ ሶሻልን ይዋቅዕና ብዙሕ ግዜ ናይ ፖለቲካ ቅዋምና ኣብ ዓዲ ናብዚ ሒዝናዮ ንመጽእ እሞ ድሓር ዝተፈላለየ ተሓዛንሕዝ እንታይ ይደባልቐና ይተሓዋወሰና ምስለኩም ምስቲ ናይ ሶሻል ናብራና ፈላሊኻ ንኹሉ ተፈላለየ ስቴጅ ኣለዎ ነቲ ፖለቲካ ናይ ባዕሉ ስቴጅ ኣለዎ ኣብ ደገ ክኾን ይግብኦ ነቲ ኮሚኒቲ ግን ከም ሓደ ቤተሰብ ክንሰርሕ ኣለና ኣብ ዝብል ብጣዕሚ ብብዙሕ ተዋሲእናሉ ተቃሊስናሉ ኢና ሶፋር ዝሐሸ ነገር እናርአና ምዃንና እናገለጽኩ ተበግሶይ ብኸምኡ እዩ ነይሩ ይቐኒየለይ
Thank you, Zuriyash. Do any of you guys want to add to that? Just touch on, you guys are leaders in your communities. How did you get involved and how was your experience with that?
Yeah, sure. I can go next. As probably most of you guys here, before the war started, I was not really engaged in the Tigrayan community because I was thinking as Ethiopian and I was not that much engaged with the Ethiopian either, but my engagement was not good. But when the war started, it was not a choice for me, but it was a duty to step up and kind of be part of the community and be part of the change that I would like to see and be helpful instead of just sitting down and, you know, be depressed at home. So that is how I started to get engaged by going to protest. I didn't really know a lot of Tagarus in the Bay Area, for example, where I live. But once I started going to protest, I started to get be friends. Now I have amazing support group that I was able to get from that. And just like many other relationship or any other kind of things that you create, there was some obstacles. And basically because we're getting to know new people which we didn't know before, we're working with these people intimately and in many ways, and there are going to be conflicts. And those are kind of the obstacles that I can explain. But the more I get to spend more time with my Tagaru brothers and sisters, and the more I get to learn about their individual qualities and individual talents, those obstacles become more easier. So that's all I can say.
Thank you, Hidat. Samhal, I'd love if you would add on to that.
I would say that prior to the genocide, I was heavily involved in just our church community. So that's where I initially started at a young age, just being in the community and feeling that presence. I always saw the value and the power of when we came together and when we would praise and worship. I always wanted more, so that was kind of my gateway into then becoming a part of our community. So it wasn't necessarily the genocide that helped me get more involved because I already knew these people and, you know, we celebrated together, we mourned together and all the in-betweens. Some of the obstacles I could say that I faced were a mix between my own personal insecurities and being like, you know what, I'm not as traditional as I should be. I don't read and write in Tigrinya. I'm not as fluent, and sometimes I wear facial jewelry, or I might have purple hair at a goila one night, and so I felt like that kind of excluded me, and I would be like, I'm different, or I don't belong, and then later on, I feel like there was a point where I realized that these things that also made me feel like I wasn't good enough or that I was a little bit different, that my uniqueness is actually what kept me grounded and helped me become more of the community, because there are other people who are like me or who feel that way and they're like, I don't belong, but sometimes you stand in your own way.
I love that. Thank you, Samhal. That was perfect. Well said. I think Zuriyash wants something to add.
እሺ ሓንቲ ነገር ክውስኽ ዝደለኹ ናፍቲ ኣነ ዝገልጾ ፀናሕኩ ሶሻልን ፖለቲካን ተዋቂዕና ዝብል ኣብ ናይ ውሽጢ ፖለቲካና ማለት እዩ እዚ ቅድም ኢሉ ዝነበረ እዩ ዝዛረብ ዘለኹ ኦብስታክል ኮይኑ ፀኒሑ እዩ ግን ሕዚ ኸበየለና እንተልና ግን ትፀገም ዝመፃ ኣብ ትግራዋይ ዝተባሃለ ብምሉእ ስለ ዝኾነ ኣብ ሓደ ምዕራፍ ከም ዘለና ሓድነታ ዝጠንከረ ኮይኑ ከም ዝተርኣየ ብእውን ክንቅጽል ምዃንና ክንዕወት ምዃንና ከዓ ክገልጽ ፈቱ ይቐኒለይ
All right, so as we all know, through our advocacy, we've been trying to break out of our echo chamber and influence the next generation to kind of take the torch as we move on. So I'm wondering, how have you leveraged outside communities to impact your own community building? And what avenues of development have you championed for the next generation of women leaders?
Sure, can go next. Yeah, you know, when the war started, when we start thinking about how we can help, and for me, the first thing that comes to my mind is using my own talents, using my own qualities and abilities, and that's what everybody is doing here, by the way. I am fluent in Spanish, so first thing I thought was our first thing that advocacy we were doing was creating awareness about what's happening in Tigray, the true nature, the genocidal nature of the war. So I used my skill, you know, I do interviews, I write my own articles and kind of create that network with people who are writing things in Spanish. So that's one thing that I used. And the other one is I'm a banquet manager by profession. So if creating events and hosting events is something that also I do. So I kind of collaborate with NGOs that work to help Tigray in kind of, you know, organizing events, hosting them, and during that event kind of not only about, it's not about the money, but also advocacy and getting more partnership from people that are outside our community. And also kind of being a model to other events. For example, the first event that we had in the Bay Area was beautiful, and we got a lot of feedback from our community. They wanted to do the same thing. So that's kind of sharing experience to kind of incorporate and bring more people that are outside our communities.
Did you guys want to add to that?
Yes, I would like to add, as the community ክንዋሳእ እንተለና more ከምስ መንእሰይ ወለዶ ኣብ ኮሎራዶ ይዛረቡ ዘለኹ ከም ኮሚኒቲ መራሒት መጠን ብዝበዝሕ ኣብ ኮሎራዶ ውሽጢ ናይ መናእሰይና ተሳትፎ እናበርትዕ ዝኸደሉ ድሕሪ 2019 ከዓ ብዝበለፀ ማለት እዩ ኣብኡ ናይ መጀመርያ ልክዕ ከምዞም ቺካጎ ጌርናዮ ዘለና ስለዚ ተገበረ ኣብኡ TPN ተመስሪቱ ካብኡ ከዓ ናታቶም ኢንቮልቭመንት እናበዝሐ ኸይዱ ኣብቲ መረፃ ባዕሉ ፍርቂ ኮይና ማለት እዩ ኮሎራዶ ኣብቲ ግዜ እሱ ዋላ እኳ ኣብቲ ኣይትመረፅ እምበር ጓል ተንሽተይቲ ጓልና ምልእተ ብጣዕሚ ካብ ነዊሕ ግዜ ሰሪሓትሉ ዳርጋ ፍርቂ ዕድማ ብታ ዘላታ ያንግ ዕድመ እውን ማለት እዩ ንኮሚኒቲ ዘለዋ ዴዲኬሽን ሕሉፍ ነገር እዩ ኣብ ቮት ትደፍአና ኣብ ስራሓውቲ ኩሉ ክንገብሮ ዝግበአና ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ከም ተጋሩ ብክልተ እግርና ጠጠው ክንብል ብሕልፊ ፖለቲካሊ ብኸመይ ይርአና እቲ መንግስቲ ይኹን ማሕበረሰብ ይኹን ብዙሕ ዝሰርሐትሉ ነገር ነይሩ እሞ እንታይ ንገብር ነርና ኣብ ዘድሊ ኣክቲቪቲታት ናትና ኮሚኒቲ ተሓዊዙ ንክሰርሕ ኣብ ዝግበር ምስቶም መናእሰይ ደቅና ብምሕዋስ ኣነ ያው ብተኽኣለ መጠን ኣብ ቅድሚት ብምባል ኣስጢምካ ብምሓዝ ብዙሕ ሰሪሕና ኢና ኣብዚ ናይ ሕዚ ዘሎ እዋናት እውን ናብ ኮንግረስ ምስቶም ስታፈርስ ድዩ ምስ ብተፈላለየ መልክዑ ንዞም ኮንግረስመን ወይ ወመን ብዙሕ ናይ ዓድና ድምፂ ንኽንከውን ሕዚ እውን ተዋና ተዋሳኢት ዘላ ተደማፂት እውን ኣብቲ ከባቢና ስለ ዝኾነት ምልእተ ከይዘከርክዋ ኣይሓልፍን ካብኡ ሓሊፍና ከዓ ምስ እዚኦም ኔቲቭ ኣሜሪካንስ ያውም ብፀልማት ኢና ኸድና ናቶም ፕሮግራም ብዝጀምበልዎ ብሓባር ኮይና ንሶም ንናይ ባዕሎም ንሕና ንናይ ባዕልና ኣድቮኬት ንገብረሉ መንገዲ ተጠቒምና بخوم عين الشانل ناخدنا تو كوميونيتينا بستم كالوت أفلتون زرخ ولو منجدي سريحنا إنا خبيل فوتو يا أبنائي.
Thank you. So I also just want to remind ourselves that as we're talking about our experiences here in the diaspora, it's important for us to tie everything back home because that's what this is all for. So I just want to highlight the struggles of the Tigrawaiti women back home, and I'm wondering, what role do women in Tigray have in fighting against the genocidal war, and what gender-specific obstacles are they facing?
Yeah, I mean, the role that women are playing in fighting this genocidal war is huge. I can't even explain it with words because we know that women have leadership role in many things. They are the core of the community. They are the ones the glue that holds everything together. And because our enemies know that, they attack them. They use their body to destroy our community. And that's how we know. But despite everything that happened to them, they also continue to be the most resilient and the most people that are still strong and showing us the way to fight this kind of genocidal war. And we're seeing that in all areas. When I think about our women back home, for example, they have been victims of the sexual violence that we have seen, horrible acts, and they're forced to have children that they're not by their choice. And now they're forced to see their children starve and die. And how can, be on that side and be a leader and becoming as a strong and resilient, for me is something that I cannot honestly explain. But yet we're seeing them being strong and being the being the leader to show us the way in different ways, in creating foods that are not used to eating, for example, in being leaders in the war front and in being leaders in all kinds of areas. So they're still showing us the way, even though they have been the victims of this war on purpose.
Very well said, thank you.
Yeah, I can add up a little bit in here. We see the heroes back home, Etienne victim ኮይነን ዘለዋ ዝገበርኦ ቃልሲ psychological ድዩ physical ድዩ ከምኒ ሞናሊዛ ሕዚ is a good example ንኽትብል ዝኽትቃልስ ዝገበረቶ ንኽትድሕን ዝገበረቶ ቃልሲ at least ህይወታ እኒሆ ዋላ እግራ ተቆረፀ ማለት እዩ እቲ ትውሽጠን ዘሎ ሕራነ ኣብ ኩለን ከም ዘሎ ንፈልጥ ኢና ንሳ ሓንቲ መርኣያ እያ ማለት እዩ እና ብተኽኣለ መጠን ኩሉ ኣብዚ ዘለዎ ብዲያስፖራ ድዩ ብደገ ዓዲ ውሽጢ ድዩ ብዙሕ ሽግር እናሕለፈ እምናዓረ ዝበሃል ናይ ትረት መግለፂ እዩ እዚ ህዝቢ እዚ ብጣዕሚ ተሪር እዩ እሞ ኣፍተን ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ዝረአ ከዓ ትዝበለፀ ትዝሓየለ ምዃኑ ብተፈጥሮ እውን ብከይዲ እውን ዘጋጥመን ዘሎ ሽግራት ተዋፂኦንኦ ክኸዳ ምኽኣለን ሓደ ዓብዪ መርኣያ እዩ ካሊእ ኣብቲ ሲቪል ራይትስ ዝምልከት ኣብ ናይ ጥራሕ ኣብ ናይ ዓድና ውሽጢ ጥራሕ ዘይኮነስ እቶ ከም ዘሎ ብሙሉእ እንትን ኣብ ፋይቲም ዘለዋ ብዝኾነ መንገዲ ሚሊተሪ እውን ዝቃለስ ኣለዋ ጥራሕ ዘይኮነስ ኣብ ተራድኦ ድዩ ኣብ መሃብ ድዩ ኣብ ተፈላለየ መንገዲ ሕዚ ብዝበልፅ ኣብቲ ቅድሚት ትረኽበን ደቂ ኣንስትዮ እየን እዚ ከዓ ብጣዕሚ ዘሐብነና ዘሐጉሰና ይኸውን እሞ እቲ ኦብስታክል እንታይ እዩ እቲ ናይ ናትና ኣብ ውሽጥና ዘሎ ናይ ምቕባል ጥራሕ ዘይኮነስ ብኣክሽን ምርኣይ ሕዚ ኣሕዋትና ደቂ ተባዕትዮ እንታይ ክገብሩ ኣለዎም ኣብ ዝብል እናወሰኽኩ ካሊእ ዝሕሎ ነገር ብዙሕ የለን ጥራሕ ምብርትታዕን ኤሊቬት ምግባርን ነተን ዝቃለሳስ ግቡአን ክብሪ ሂብካ ኣብ ግቡእ ክበፅሓ ኣብዚ ዓዲ እውን ባዕሉ እናነበርናስ ክንዲ ምንታይ ኢና ተቐቢልናዮ እትዮም መወዳትና ማለት እዩ ምቕባል እውን ጥራሕ ዘይኮነስ ክንዲ ምንታይ ከኢና ሓጊዝናየን ልዕል ኢለን ክርከባ ክሰርሓ ብዝበለፀ ክዋስኣ ምክንያቱ ንሪአን ኣለና ኣፈጻጽም ኣጀማምራውን ኣፈጻጽማውን ክንድምንታይ ሲሪየስ ምዃንን ንሪአን ስለ ዘለና ካብ ኣሕዋትና ደቂ ተባዕትዮ ንጽበዮ ሞራልን ሓገዝ ኤኒ ብዝኾነ ኮርነር ክሕገዛ ዝኽእላሉ መንገዲ ክግበር ፈቱ ቀኒለ
Thank you, Mamher Zuriyash. So you kind of touched on what we're going to talk about next. So I'll go ahead and move on to the next question, which speaks about how historically women have been at the forefront fighting against, leading civil rights movements, essentially. So I'm wondering what methods can we implement to help close the gender gap that we see there?
So as they stated, historically women have been responsible for a lot. Not only are they the fighters, but they have been providing food in a famine and, rationing it out, as well as mourning. So they're being brave while they have to mourn. But something that I want to keep in mind when we speak of this gender gap is these men are only the men they are today because we raised them. They are our brothers, they are our sons, they are our fathers. So they're a reflection of who we are. And I think that what we haven't done enough of is providing and creating a space for them to take leadership. It's not that they are not involved, it's that they may not be in these leadership roles that we speak of, or be here in the diaspora, for example, frontline in leading these protests. And it's maybe because we have created these households where they are the provider and they are the protector. We don't necessarily ask them to step up and be more. So essentially, it is our fault because we do have to hold them to a higher standard and make them feel like there is a place for you as well, and that this isn't a woman-led movement.
Very well said. So this war has taken a toll on all of us. It's been a daunting 600 plus days, nearly 600 days. So I just want to know, what self-care methods have you guys implemented to stay grounded and just get you through these very difficult and turbulent times?
In the beginning, I didn't. Just like a lot of other people, I neglected my self-care. I felt like every hour and every minute of every day had to be dedicated to Tigray advocacy, and that's all that mattered. I felt guilty, to go get lunch because you're like, okay, we're in a famine. Over 90% of the population is starving. Or little moments of joy didn't feel good because we're all grieving. But then I realized that there's power in your pain. So if you channel it, then you could move through it, and there's growth. I personally like to go to the gym and throw heavy objects around. And there's something in that where I can witness my strength week to week versus something mentally we don't necessarily see the growth right away, but physically I can. And then I challenge all my friends. I always ask them like, hey, can you just name one thing that brings you joy that doesn't involve the presence of any other people? And I ask you guys to do the same. Like, think of a hobby or something that you do that doesn't involve the presence of other people and that brings you joy. It doesn't even have to be monetary gain, but take that time to be with yourself and to reflect, because that's how you move forward.
Do either of you have something to add?
Yeah. Okay. أنا still حزون تخونا ناي community دي experience هذه أفتي حماق جزء كورونا جميرنا بتعمي active كوينا نكاسا أصل لخونا تاتنيرو مزوار أرحي قوم زي خدو ويك عزي يزورو ولدي زدخمو مقبي درق مقبي جزيخا مقبال أم distribute أم مقبار أم حاجة زي متخخاوز مسحسل نجر نفسنا active جرنا يا أفتي سون بعلو سلماتي بسرو فالون حما ينيرو بكورونا جميرنا دحرنا وزكوينات زيتينا حزي أفتخوينات جزيون تمساس هالي نجارات بمقبار كاب عدي قد تخاب مهبر ديو خاب تفلالي مستاي عدل رخيبهم كوت زخولنا زمزو سلمتهم أم حجاز تو community بتعمي active كوينا نحجز نيرنا حزي زيتا جيرو تجيزنا ሒዝዎ ማለት እዩ ሕዚቱ ሓሳብካ ክንዲሕ ንውሽጥኻ እናሰማዕኻ ኣብ ጭንቀት ምውዓል ኣብ ስራሕ ንሕልፎ ነርና ማለት እዩ ካብኡ ሓሊፉ ግን ንመብዛሕቲና ኸ ተወሰነ እዩ እቲ ኣክቲቪቲ ናይ ኮሚኒቲ ክገብሮ ዝኽእል ግን እቲ መብዛሕቱ ሰብ ከታይ ንገብር ነርና ሰብ ከም ሳይኮሎጂ ዘጽንዑ ይኹኑ ብሃይማኖት እውን ነክ ነገር ኮይኑስ ቁሩብ ነቲ ሰብ ካልም ክገብሮ ዝኽእል እውን እናዓደምና ብፓነል ዲስካሽን ብናይ ታይስሙና ምጻና ብዙም ማለት እዩ ነቲ ሰብና ከምዚ ኣብኡ ዝርርብ ከም ዝገብርና ገበርና ቡና ኮፊ ታይም ንብሎ ኣለና ኣብ ኮሚኒቲና ኣብኡ እውን ብምርኻብ ብምውጋዕ መችም ተውጊዕኻዮ እዩ እቲ ስትረስ እውን ታይስሙ ዝብል እሞ እሱታት ኩሉ እናገበርና ሕዚ እግረ መንገድና እንታይ ንኾን ኣለና እቲ ፀገምና እኒሆ መፍትሒ እውን ኣብኡ ይዝርከብ ተዘራሪብካ መፍትሒ ኣሎ ትገብሮ ተንጥዎ ሓደ ነገር ስለ ዘሎ ብከምዚ ኢና ሓሊፍናዮ ዝብል እንታይ ስሙ በይነይ ጥራሕ ዘይኮንኩስ ባላ ብኮሚኒቲ ደረጃስ መብዛሕት ብከምዚ ሓሊፍናዮ ክብል ፈቱ
Thank you. So I've got one more question for our panelists, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys. So those questions you guys had, get them ready, because I'm going to pass it on for you guys to be the moderators next. As we all know, every single person is really important. We cannot miss having a single person up on the front and advocating on behalf of our people. So what advice do you guys have for young women leaders who may not be tapped into the larger community?
To the young women leaders, I would say just take the step and be present, show up, because there are very few things in life that are worthwhile that come without a cost, and that's community. Just you being there, you can contribute. There's so many ways that you can get involved. There's so many resources, and donate all of your talents to Tigray. Donate your hobbies to Tigray, and you never know who you can be inspiring, because there might be another person who feels like I don't belong, or by you setting that example, it might be cool enough and people might want to show up at the community center every week, you know? And personally, I learned so much from the youth in our community. That has been such a big, it's been a gain for me. Like, I feel like I'm volunteering or I'm contributing, but I'm the one that gets more out of it, because you see the way that these future generations and our future leaders, the way they think, the way that they operate, and they're so much more progressive than us, and they're not stuck in these traditional ways that we may have been, and we find new ways and methods, you know, to help for a greater Tigray, for a future Tigray.
Thank you, Samhal. Do either of you want to add anything to that? Any advice for young women who are not tapped in?
Yeah, I can add. I just want to say, don't wait for anybody's invitation. Tigray belongs to all of us. Nobody's better, I mean, nobody has more belongingness in Tigray. Tigray is نقولنا معريات بالسهلنا. سلازي حدا سب كسوع عنها تبايع بالليل. بعليه كم ليدر كوينا شو أب جبر لني. معناته كم ليدر كوينا شو أب جبر كله خاني. criticism كالي عينات كم زمان تسول أو مري هيدا خاطر لني. تزاي كوينو كالي expectation حرجة خيرة أفتح ما قدي زخانة تجمعات حاجاتن كله بقليلو تسفح أرز إماراتيو. سلازي we shouldn't wait for anybody's invitation. We have to show up, use our skills. We all have a unique skill. We all have different qualities that we are born with and we learned. So don't be shy to show that up. And the other advice that I want to give is lift each other up. By lifting each other up, we gain so much actually. By helping someone, we gain so much. Sometimes we don't see it, but when we lift somebody, we get so much out of it. And especially at this moment, we need to lift each other up in order to get to rebuild and part of the solution that we want to see in Tigray. And lastly, I want to say that we have learned so much in the last 20 months. We have learned so many unfortunate things that happened to us and our family. We have to work with purpose. Everything we do, every money we spend, everywhere we go, we have to think Tigray in our mind and use resources that are around us. And just think Tigray wherever we go and be purposeful in how we raise our children, in how we engage, in how we motivate our other Tagarus. So I feel like work with purpose. Thank you.
Great advice. Thank you.
Okay. Let me add up just one thing. They said it all. Be yourself. Get there. Don't wait for invitation. Plus, initiatives in our community, people don't accept it right away. And new ideas, new things come in, new actions. We don't take it right away. Don't get offended. That's how we are. But if you challenge and you could do it, that's it. We are successful. So that's where we need to stand. Thank you.
That was amazing advice, and I hope that resonated with all of you. Perseverance, being authentic, and, don't wait for an invitation. Like she said, Tigrai is all of ours. So I'm going to pass it on to you guys. Do you guys have any questions for our panelists here? Don't all speak at once, guys. Right over here. I'll pass the mic.
يحبني يغني لي بتعمي خمس مسألة مسمى مهراي زخانة مدرغيو في الليل ما نايدك نشي حتى مسيخة خمسة عينة بانل مقبار بوزح قلة زلك عندك نشتو أنا نبعلي بوزح تمهيرة مالتيو حانتي من البات تو جزاحي زواخي خد زدالخوان نجر مس نايدك نشي حتى بوليتيكان بزملكتيو حتى دك نشتيو ناي بوليتيكا حتى يو فتحت خوينو دما بوليتيكا فتح يزليو سلازي عنتو ممر زرايش زهافكيو توتق على الخونتات أبانا في سمين أمريكا زلو بوليتيكان كوميونيتينج زعن حاوس خم خازل الشجر خمس زلو خوينو قندما أبزل لنا شجر فتحنا دما بوليتيكا أيوكون مالتي تحطه بوليتيكا وحطه سلازخونه تخلي ولا حزون أبزح على في عصر شمونت عسر عامز عسر ورحزر نايو بزحد دك نشتيو من أسي وزحد دك نشتيو نبارات هون نقدميت مسئين بزح سرح زلوا أفت بوليتيكا زلوا الرأي حف زبل سلازخونه أيو تنمر راح تقول لك نوس طلع الأوس بوليتيكا وسلازخونه تمر راح حون بولك ناتنكر هات خير مش تعد زلوا هون خمو تمساس على الملك تنا بوليتيكا هيوة عريز ولا أفتقال سون مرز ولا أبدك أنشت حتى أم مفتحون زلونون بتعم زتنكر إيخون مو تخالي في اللي من أسيدك أنشتيو أبوليتيكا زلون الرأي كي يحمق زيرو أبدك ناي تجراي ناشي جرس وبوليتيكا يتفتحمو نسا خبز لزلخون يمو بوليتيكا ساقمنا هيو كينمل كوسخ لزدلخيه لازم أبزيا ممهرون خلات خنون رؤيته حبلا أغني لي
All right, that was great. I'm not as fluent as Mamher Zuriya here, so I'm going to let her go ahead and respond to that.
እሺ تحتو تأيزي نايدك أنستيو قداي بسروون حفشاويو مالتسي زدلي عينتنا بوليتيكا أكايدا ويكا أتفلالي بوليسي هالوهم بوليتيكا درجتات هالو أفتان نايدك أنستيو أمتا كلهم حدا خخونو فوتو مالتو انتاي أفتفتاتعا دك أنستيو يكالسا أفت ليدرشيب يرأيان دك أنستيو زعازز سرحاوتي أو جراوندي سرحاوتي مريتي سرحا جن أفتقدمي تيترينن مبزحت جيزة بحد وجن كالتشرالي خروم كستاينا ريزرفد كخونا لون فيمينين نايموخان بحر نايمر أيس كمزي تقبل النت تفتاو الناس زمسلوون سبي السانن اتناتنا سوون تاي الله سحب زبلك أزقوت كان جرولني جن بالتخالمات أنتو إنكارج ناي مقبرون ناي دك توعتيونات إرح ناي دك توعتيون دك أنستيو سنسات كان كم تهدأ أتزولتو اللي بيت مقبرت رح زي كونس بمنجست درجة ببوليتيكا درجة كإمانلون كسرحلون زقبا دك أنستيو أوزي تبحل فيزن يانج جنريشن ون نعانا ون እናሓዘና ማለት እዩ እናሓገዛ እናደፍኣና ብትኽክል ናይ ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ቦታ ኣብ ቦትኡ ክርከብ ክግብኦ ቃልስና ክንቅፅል ከም ዝግበአና ብዝኾነ ኣንፈት ብዝተረኸበ ቀዳድ ክንሰርሐሉ ከም ዝግባእ ኣኣምን ብከምዚ ክንፈትሖ ንኽእል ኢና ዝብል ኣለኒ ካብ ኩሉ ግን ኣነ ሓዝብ እዚኣ ክብላ ዝደልያ መንግስቲ ስለ ዝኾነ ክበሃልዮ ክንገሮ ይብሉን ጌጋ ምንጋርስ ከም ሓጢያት ዝወስዶ ከም ዝጥልመት ዝወስዶ ሰብ ኣሎ ኣይኮነን ንባዕሉ ነቲ ፓርቲ እውን እዩ ዝጠቕሞ ትጋገለኻ እዚ ኣልክዕ ኣይኮነት ብላክ ኤን ዋይት ተነጊርካዮሲ እሱ እዩ ኢምፕሩቭ ዝገብር እሞ እሱ እውን ይጸንሕ ምስ ክብሩ ኣይወርድ እዚታት ኩሉ ክንመሃሃረሉ ዝግባእ ነገራት ኣሎ እሞ ኣብቲ ናይ ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ግን ክስርሐሉ ኣለዎ ንምንታይ እንተኢልኩም ዝሓወይ ዝገለጸ ሕዚ ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ኣብቲ ቅድሚት ኣለዋ ኣብቲ ሚሊተሪ ሓደ ነገር ፍሽኽ ከብለኩም እሞ ድሓር ናብ ቁም ነገር እያ ግን ደቂ ኣንስትዮና ታየርእየን ኣብ ዓለም ይመስለኩም እዞም ጎረቤትና ጸላእትና ሕዚ ብኩሉ መልክዕ ክጎድኡና ተላዒሎም ዘለው ናይ ዝኣረጊ ሰብኣይ ተኸተልቲ ሓንቲ ሰበይቲ ታይላ እዚ ሰብኣይ እዚ እስክንድዚ የለዎ ፍራፍረ ነገር ኢላ ተዛሪባ ማለት እዩ ሕዚ ከምዚ በቃ ስብእነት ብከምኡ ዝዕቀን ዓይነት ጌራ እያ ትዛረብ ነይራ ደቂ ኣንስትዮና ከተጋሩ ስብእነት ብኡ ከም ዘይዕቀን ወላ ሓንቲ ዘይብለን ግን እንታይ ገብራ ኣለዋ ያ they doing it ብሙሉኦም ጸላእትና ኣንበርኪኸንኦም ማለት እዩ ስለዚ እዚ ነገር እዚ ቀሊል ኣይኮነን ሕዚ እዚ እንታይ የርእየና ኣሎ ማለት ሓንቲ ሃገር ትግራይ ሃገረ ትግራይ ኢና ንፈልጥ ድሕሪ ሕዚ ሃገረ ትግራይ ከም ሃገር ተሰቂላ ብትኽክል ኣብ ቦታኣ ክትርከብ እንተኮይና ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ክለዓዓላን ክሕገዛን ኣብ ቦትአን ኣብቲ ዝግበአን ክብሪ ዝግበአን ናይ ተበግሶአን ሓገዝቲ ኮይንካ ምርካብ ሓደ ካብቲ ቃልስና ምዃኑ ተፈሊጡ ኩሉ ሰብ ክለዓለላ ኣለዎ ኢለ ኣምን ይቐኒየለይ
Very well said. I think we have time for about one or two more questions, and we'll pass it to Dr. Mulugeta.
يقني لي دكتور مولجيتا سرستوالكو يتلعيله جن أتو مولجيتا thank you من الوقت أمريكا خمسة له 1991 زتقبلني حاوي هايل كيروس بوليتيكين يايو كل عينات نجارات مس بوليتيكا أساسيرو إزرائيل ناي بوليتيكا ليكيو أف سوفيت أف قدم ملتات صبوا غيرونا تقرأ بوليتيكسون صراحة لو سبسلة زغنا ببوليتيكا ترح رئيولهم نايدك أنستيو رايت ويقع نايدك أنستيو مثل it is a human right زيك سمورا لزقبونا قريب a right to be treated equal with any human beings a right to have equal access to education to healthcare to live free of fear, oppression, domination, and any inequality and unjustified things is a human right. We are created equal. We are created to live in harmony, in an equal level. So it's not only political, but it is human rights. It is social issue that has to be addressed in community. We are not talking about Democrat or Republican here. We are talking about Tagaru living in a supportive level, having a ground of respect and harmony. So we have to make sure this is a human right, not anything else. So we are entertaining human rights, entertaining social lives, and not politics. So I'm not opposing to what he said. He saw it in one line, but we see it broadly here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mulugeta. Sorry about that correction from earlier. I think that's very important to say is that women's rights are multifaceted. There's a political aspect of it. There's a social aspect of it. You do have to look at all of the different aspects of our lives with a gendered perspective. Every issue that you can think about has a gendered aspect of it. So there's the gendered aspect of politics, and there's a gendered aspect of our society and classism and education, work. Everything has a gendered perspective, so it's always something to keep in mind.